algebra when I was 8 years old. I was in the Math Olympics. I was in this thing called Academic Decathlon. I was a geek. And in the 6th grade, in the Science How-To project, I built a transformer that turned alternating current into direct current. That is just straight geek credentials right there. Now, when you are a geek of that degree, things can be rough. There's some downside. But just to finish up, sort of round out my geek credentials, the last thing that I coded before I became an entrepreneur was a 2-layer neural network in Lisp. Boom. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go into the guide, Geek's Guide to Becoming an Entrepreneur. And really, that should probably say number 1, but we'll go with number 2. First is you got to find something broken. Something broken that you are passionate about. In my case, this is me and my co-founder having a romantic evening by the Eiffel Tower. We were in Paris. We couldn't get a taxi. And we said, my co-founder said, I wish we could just push a button and get a ride. Simple problem. Find your problem that you're passionate about. Because we both lived in San Francisco, there are no taxis, and we wanted to do something about it. And taxis, we didn't realize, are a real problem. They're way beyond, we didn't understand why we couldn't just get a ride, but there's a reason. This right here is a New York City taxi medallion. There are 13,000 cabs in New York today. Anybody want to guess how many cabs there were in New York 60 years ago? 13,250. So the number of cabs in New York has not changed in 60 years. And why is that? They gave out all these free licenses to own and operate cabs. And then those license holders lobbied city government to give out no more. And they lobbied city government to allow it to be a tradable asset. They created artificial scarcity so that the asset value went up. And each one of those in 2014 was worth $1.2 million, one license to own and operate a single cab. Why is that? That's because nobody else could get in the business. And that meant if a taxi driver wanted to make a living, he had to go ask for permission from a taxi owner. And that taxi owner then would say, sure, you can be a taxi driver. You just have to pay me $150 a day. That taxi driver pays $40,000 a year to rent a car. And you think, well, if he's $40,000 a year, this must be some nice taxi. I mean, I see these all over Delhi and Bangalore for sure. You don't see anything like this anywhere. What happens is the guy who owns that license, he gets all the money, and the taxi driver gets nothing. For the privilege of paying $40,000 a year renting a car, he now can be impoverished. And it's that way in cities around the world. That was the actual problem that created Uber. And then there's the rider side. We couldn't get a ride. Why is that? There weren't enough cabs out there. And so now we're talking about a real problem where there aren't enough cars to get people around. Drivers cannot, so people can't get around, but drivers now can't make a living. And that's a problem for cities. And that's the problem that Uber solved. But that's a problem that, of course, needs to be solved. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you're a geek who wants to be an entrepreneur, it has to be a hard problem. If it's an easy problem, then everybody will solve it, and it won't be that special. So you have to have something hard. And so at Uber, I refer to myself as the problem solver in chief. Everybody says, hey, what's going on? Man, I got problems. And oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, I'm excited. And I make the analogy of like a math professor. Think about a math professor who has no problems. That's a sad math professor. And so as an entrepreneur, it's the same thing. You want problems to solve. And I want as many hard ones as I possibly can get. And therefore, at Uber, I am the problem solver in chief. And so this right here is a map of Manhattan. This is New York City. This is a heat map of people who are opening up their app in a 15-minute interval. We have to not just see when people open up their app. We actually have to predict it. Why is that? Because Uber's promise is that we can get you a car in 5 minutes, no matter where you are in the world. And so we have to predict demand 15 minutes ahead of time, but not just that, supply, cars on the road, well, if you have that heat map, cars on the road are anti-heat. They suck heat out of the map. And what's left is residual heat. And that residual heat is underserved demand. That's the map we give drivers. They now go to the places that are most underserved, the places, therefore, that they're most likely to get a ride in the next 15 minutes. This stuff's hard. But we also wind pricing into that. And so those hot spots, this is London right here, the price goes up. Where there's too many cars, the price goes down. But once you start solving, you can't rest on your laurels, because you're not going to be an entrepreneur very long if you get lazy or if you get comfortable with the problems you've already solved. You've got to be the math professor that keeps looking for the next harder problem. In Uber, of course, we have that because, of course, driverless is coming, right? Google, Tesla, Apple, OEM manufacturers are all thinking about driverless technology. Uber needs to be part of the future, relegated to the past. And so we have cars that are literally creating 3D models of the world around streets so that ultimately cars can move through cities autonomously. Number 4, for all the geeks who want to be entrepreneurs, is to be analytical. Well, we already are, but also to be creative. The magic comes is when you cross analytical skills or analytical expertise or mindset with a creative instinct that can inspire people, that brings joy, and just can be the game changer. And so we hear about this. There's the left brain and the right brain. Geeks are always left brain, or almost always, but geeks who become entrepreneurs also tap into the right brain and the creativity. And so this right here is a diagram of what's called the Babbage machine. It was the first computer ever designed. Very analytical. Computers, though, can do anything. They can compute anything. But without creativity, what they compute doesn't matter. This is an interesting sandcastle. But obviously, people who are artists really are tapping fully into that right brain part of their that right brain side of them. And the person who becomes an entrepreneur has to fuse these two things. So Albert Einstein said creativity is intelligence having fun. And what does that mean for Uber? Well, we do this all the time, but once a year we do what we call Uber Ice Cream. Now, Uber Ice Cream is one day a year you can push a button and instead of getting a car, an ice cream truck comes to you. Now, why is that so much fun, or why is that interesting? Why is it on the creative side? Well, it's a vision for bringing people back to when they were 8 years old. You used to chase the ice cream truck. Now the ice cream truck comes to you and people get very excited, and what we're doing is we're capturing people's imaginations. Of course, we do transportation every day, but if you can capture their imaginations and remind them of why you do amazing things, you can change the way they think about you. And of course, we also delivered many pieces of ice cream via drone. Perception versus reality. The entrepreneur has to know the difference between perception and reality. And in fact, the entrepreneur looks for the times when perception and reality have the largest gap between them. If the world thinks everything is over here, but reality is over here, the entrepreneur that sees that, I call the distance between the two the innovator's playground. And so the great entrepreneur looks for those things where everybody thinks one thing and they're all wrong. And so it can be tricky to figure out what that is, because guess what? Sometimes the world thinks something and they're right. And so it's looking for those times when they're wrong, and the most important thing, though, is, well, I'll go for, sorry, hold on a second. So it can be confusing. And another Albert Einstein quote, the one who follows the crowd will usually go no further than the crowd. The one who walks alone is likely to find themselves in places no one has ever been. And so you have to, as an entrepreneur, have to look for those times and places when you're doing something that's different than everybody else. Because if it is the same as everybody else, then what you're doing is not going to be special. What you're doing is not going to be breakthrough or game-changing. And so as an entrepreneur, you have to get used to the life of, well, kind of going against the grain, thinking something completely different than everybody else. And in my last company, which the first 4 years I didn't make a salary, it was a lot of hard times before things went well. I like to say I got 100 no's a day for 4 years straight. That's over 100,000 no's. And so you have to be quite resilient and up to the task of nobody believing that you know what you're talking about and everybody thinking you're crazy. But when you see the difference between perception and reality, you better be right. Because remember, sometimes what people think is true. I hope that's not a lion right there. And so so sometimes this actually comes into some of the best entrepreneurs are very good at understanding risk and actually in some ways mitigating it. So if lots of people think that something is very risky and you think it's not risky at all and you're right, well, there's a huge opportunity there. Go after it. If you think there's something that has a lot of risk and everybody thinks it's low risk, then you're going to win by staying away. But hold on a second. Can you? Nope. Let me try again, guys. Hold on.
Can we get a hand mic to the stage, please? Any of the volunteers? We're getting one there, Travis.
Can you hear me now? I'm going to do the rest of the presentation like this. Okay, so sometimes the world sees something risky, like walking on a tightrope over Niagara Falls. It just is. But the entrepreneur brings something special to the party, brings an expertise that is uniquely able to mitigate that risk and can do something, even when there's lots of risk, that nobody else can do. Number 6, make magic. Making magic, of course, is about inspiring people. Of course, you have to see into the future, but you have to do it in a way that means something to people, lights them up, and gets them telling their friends. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Pulp Fiction, but they have this briefcase, and it's got this glowing thing in it, and you never get to see what it is, but everybody is drawn to it. That is magic. And at Uber, we talk about four dimensions of magic. 1, give people their time back. 2, bring calm to their daily lives. I see people writing it down. 3, bring people joy. And 4, give them some money. Or help them save money. Or help them get a lot for their money. This right here is a patent application from Steve Jobs in 2006. He saw the future. We know that. It looks just like my phone that I have today 10 years later. Part of making magic is seeing the future way before everybody else. And seeing, in our case, it's 4 dimensions, but different companies bring magic in different ways, but seeing it way before everybody else does. And the thing is about magic is you kind of know it when you see it. You also know when you're not seeing it, right? This is a bridge. This is the Bay Bridge, which goes into San Francisco. There's nothing magical about it. It gets you into the city, okay? But there's another bridge in San Francisco. It's the Golden Gate. And I've been over that bridge hundreds of times, and every time I go over it, I see people taking pictures. And every time I go over it, I'm drawn, and sometimes I take a picture too, even though I've been over it hundreds of times. You know it when you see it. And it can be something that's beautiful, that's in your face. Sometimes it's behind the scenes, and it just makes things effortless and calm. Number 7, selling and storytelling. So I have this quote that I talk about at the office. I say, fear is the disease, and hustle is the antidote. Right? Anytime you're sort of stuck and you're worried about something, you know what? Just get up on your feet and start doing something about it. And we have this term. I went to my team here, my Uber India team. I said, "What's hustle? What's hustle in Hindi? How do you say that?"
You gotta say it.
What's that?
You gotta say it.
Always Bijugati.
Very good.
But it's got there's a certain swagger, you know, so you got to do it a certain way. Okay. So as a geek, when you think about a salesperson, sometimes you're thinking about a guy that looks like this. Geeks often judge salespeople. But if you make something beautiful and something magical, and you're not selling it, and you're not storytelling, the world will never get it. And so there are wrong ways to sell things, like right here. But there are ways to sell things with integrity, with honesty, with passion, and with storytelling. This is some storytelling we did, again, sort of capturing people's imagination. We did Uber Chopper on Father's Day in Bangalore. But here's a, whoops, sorry.
பயணம் எவ்வளவு சுவாரஸ்யமான ஒரு விஷயம் இல்ல? நம்முடைய தேவைக்கான பயணங்கள் நமக்கு திருப்பி தரதா என்ன? மறக்க முடியாத அனுபவங்கள். இந்த பயணம் நம்மளை வேற ஒரு மனிதனாவே மாத்திடுது. நாளைய பயணம் எப்படி இருக்க போகுது? நல்ல பயணமா அமையணுங்கிற ஆசையும் பதட்டமும் எல்லாருக்கும் நிறையவே இருக்கு. அதை முடிவு செய்ய போறது பயணத்தில் நம்ம சந்திக்கிற மனுஷங்க தான். அவங்களுக்கும் நமக்குமான அந்த உறவு தான்.
So of course, Uber is about transportation, but if you can elevate your storytelling to make it about bigger things, more meaningful things, about the purpose of why we're here, you can inspire people, and you can let more people hear about what you do. And so the next one is about adventure, seeking adventure. Entrepreneurs seek adventure. I don't know if you guys know where this is. This is a beach called Varkala. And I was there 10 years ago. I was doing a startup. We had 6 people. We could code from anywhere. So what did we do? We flew to Trivandrum, took a standing room only bus to Varkala, and coded from the beach for 4 weeks. All right? We could. And that's the entrepreneurial mindset. And then we go and do things where no foreign internet company has ever succeeded. People think I'm nuts. I am kind of nuts. But doing the impossible, almost done. That was a gong right there. Okay. All right, I'm going to move fast. All right, but doing the impossible is what entrepreneuring is all about. And of course, as we see the world going global, I believe, well, I think R&D and innovation is about the 3 bays: Bay Area, Beijing, and Bangalore. And I think and here in India, I think adventure is not just about building for your city or your country, but starting to think global. We're at that inflection point in India where I think innovation will start going global, and that's adventurous. And so I'm almost done. The last one is the champion's mindset. Champion's mindset is about 2 things. It's not about some basketball player going, jumping from the free throw line and dunking on somebody. The champion's mindset is about 2 things. 1, put everything you got out there. put everything you got on the field. If you have an ounce of energy left, then you have failed. 2, you will get knocked down. In entrepreneurism, you will face adversity, but get back up. And if you put everything you got out there and you get back up, it's almost impossible to fail, as long as you keep doing it. And of course, you've got to enjoy the ride. You can't just go through that when you don't like it. You have to enjoy it. That's the only way you're going to keep getting back up. And so this is Uber's kind of champions. This is what we mean when we say champions mindset.
The 600-meter underway. Heather Dornan in Minnesota finished second this event a year ago. She was in lane 4.
And Dornan is probably going to be your favorite. She actually won the NCAA championships in 2006 in the 800, but she only won 1 Big Ten championship in the 2 years.
3 laps in this event, 600 meters, 3 times around the 200-meter track here at the field house.
What a bold move by Fawn. She's looking very confident, and the Penn State runner is just running amazing today. She did win her heat in the 400, but ended up taking 4th overall.
That's Fawn Dorr moving into the lead, a sophomore from Penn State. Dorn had been running second.
Dornan last year scored 23 points for the Golden Gophers in their Big Ten championship, so they're really relying on getting a lot of points from her this weekend, and she's just coming by Fawn Dorr now in the home stretch, heading into the Bell Line.
Dornan falling down, gets up quickly, but that's going to cost her. Lucky she wasn't injured.
Her teammate just went to the front, though, so they may be able to recover from that. And Dornan is flying down the backstretch.
She is catching up.
She is going to catch Fawn Dorr, and she may catch the leader.
Wow.
But she's got fun.
This is a gutsy effort by Dornan. Can she pull it off? She's moving to 3rd. Dornan coming down the stretch from the outside. Dornan coming out strong. Dornan all the way. Dornan. She did it. Wow, unbelievable.
That is amazing. To fall.
So guys, I'm not going to get in the last part of the presentation, but I think I've put a pretty good story out there for what it means to go from. Thank you so much for inviting me to come, and it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we had the original plan of 5 questions here, 5 questions audience. We're going to cut it down to 3 questions total.
Okay.
So they better be 3 good questions.
That's up to you.
Travis, when you set up Uber, what was the original plan? How different is it from now? When you were in front of the Eiffel Tower, you were pressing one button, wishing you could press one button.
That's
for a
right.
cab. An honest answer.
The honest answer is that we didn't have big ambitions. The honest answer was when we first started, it was a side project for me, my co-founder, and our 100 friends. And you could get the app in the App Store, but you had to get a special code from me to use it. And pretty soon, I had friends from elementary school saying, hey, remember me in the sandbox? We used to hang out. And we just opened it up, and ever since then, it just sort of, it was off to the races. So it started very humble. It also started very high-end, actually, which maybe is not as humble. But it was really high-end Mercedes and things like that. But what we found is that low cost means that lots of people can use it. Lots of people using it means lots of cars. Lots of cars means low pickup times and also means reliable pickups in a bigger area. And so it also means for the driver that they can make more money because wherever they drop you off, they're more likely to get a trip back. And so we found that actually the cheaper products were actually more luxurious. And so it was really going into the low end, which I think was an interesting transformation for us.
Uberification has become, I guess, a verb, and you probably made a company a generic name faster than maybe, I guess, Xerox or whatever, or Google, very fast.
Yeah.
what next? What do you Uberify next? I mean, you know, what's the Uber of Uber as you move from cars to food to other things? And I'm sure you think about it.
Yeah, well, you know, I like to describe the Uber journey as you're driving a car down the highway and you're going pretty fast, but it's foggy. And so you can't, you don't have time to look back to see where you've gone, and you actually can't see that far ahead. The business our mission is transportation as reliable as running water, everywhere for everyone. And that means, well, we're in the business of delivering cars in 5 minutes. But once you deliver cars in 5 minutes, there's a lot of things you can deliver. And that's kind of how we think about it.
Right. Okay, the gong's gone, the final gong, but the final question is really, has India competition in India? Your biggest competitor is right here on the first row. He's actually a great friend of mine.
Fair enough.
You know Bhavish well.
Yep.
Has competition in India or just India made you change your strategies, localization, and how?
Well, look, I think, there are certain things. I think in India, payments is very different. I mean, that's been a big area for us to sort of change how we do things. There's one or two other areas that I think, I don't want to spend too much time here, but there's been a few areas that matter. And the way we deal with that is by empowering the local teams to win in their cities, to build a transportation system for their city. And look, at the end of the day, competition is good for the gong. Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you so much, Travis. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, Travis. Thank you,
It's all
Deep.
good. It's all good.
We have a small appreciation. So I'd like to call on our next panel, the participants for our next panel. The title of the session is Disruptive Power of Technology in Financial Inclusion. Could I call on Vijay Shekhar Sharma, founder and CEO of Paytm. Vijay, welcome. Abhishek Sinha, CEO of Echo Financials. Abhishek. Kabir Kumar, Senior Financial Sector Specialist, CGAP's Digital Finance Plus of the World Bank. Kabir, welcome. Mr. Nitin Mehta, MD of Atherton Capital. Mr. Mehta. Sanjay Jain, Mr. Sanjay Jain, Platform Head at Ekstep. And finally, Mr. Sharad Sharma, who will moderate this session, co-founder of iSpirit. Welcome to all of you. Okay, while this session gets set up, there can be no standing, and these aisles have to be completely clear. I'm sorry, otherwise we will not be able to proceed, and the people in these aisles will have to leave when the security comes for their final check. So please go back behind those cameras if you're in these two aisles. We cannot have anybody standing on the sides or anywhere in the back. Sharad, please go ahead.
All right, so we've been told that we have only 20 minutes, so we're going to keep it very, very crisp and keep it moving in this panel. How many of you want another Uber out of India, a purebred Uber out of India? You know what? It's going to happen in the financial sector. Why is that the case? Because think of this. You take away smartphone and GPS, do you think there would have been Uber? No GPS, no Uber. No Google Maps, no Uber. So in India, what has happened is, to address a class of problems that have never been possible to address, not just in financial inclusion, but healthcare inclusion and education. Over the last 4, 5, 6 years, there has been secretly, almost looks like a secretly built an India stack that I want to start with first. And Sanjay, take it away and in less than 5 minutes, tell us what is this new animal called India stack.
Thank you, Sharad. So over the past few years, I mean, all of you are aware of Aadhaar. Aadhaar has already reached about 950 million people, but more than being an identity, the part is that's interesting is that it is an API. You as a programmer can use build an application that rides on Aadhaar that allows people to assert their identity without being in front of anybody. They could do it on their phone, and that enables people to build applications on top of it. But Aadhaar is just the base layer. Based on the identity layer, we also have the paperless layer. People can present an Aadhaar ID card equivalent in digital form through eKYC, which meets a lot of the regulatory requirements of all our regulators. They've approved Aadhaar and eKYC as valid KYC norms for their various use cases. And above that, we now have, in the last year, launched eSign and the digital locker. And in the next year, in the next few months, we'll actually be launching the Unified Payment Interface, which again, all of these systems put an interface to which you can build an application. So now you can build an application that allows an individual on his phone, not being in front of anybody, to go in, apply for a loan, or open a mutual fund account, and start to transact with zero friction. And that is exactly what we call the India stack, which contains all of these layers. And on top of that, we have a layer which is the data consent layer, which allows you as a person to be in charge of your data. So when you do a Google search, or you make a phone call, or you visit a doctor, records of your transactions stay with the other party and not with you. They're not in your control. And what we want to do is put together a system which allows you as a consumer to stay in control of those records, to share it with the right person who can then deliver that service to you. So that's the...
So essentially, you can do presence-less, cashless, and paperless service delivery in India to 942 million people who have Aadhaar numbers. This kind of infrastructure did not exist and does not exist anywhere else in the world. And it is therefore got the potential to actually make financial inclusion happen in a way that was not possible earlier. Now, Abhishek, you are at the leading edge of this. Tell us very quickly if this is true.
Oh, absolutely. I think this couldn't have been a better time to be in the payments industry, because what we will see is emergence of 300 to 400 million new customers in the next 2 to 3 years who will have smartphones, who will have enrolled on Aadhaar. We will have UPI from NPCI live very soon. The government is opening a lot of bank accounts. We are becoming, from data poor, we are becoming data rich. So this forms a great platform for us, and smartphone brings all of this very beautifully to deliver very interesting services for the customers who haven't yet been part of the formal financial services. To give you an example, Reserve Bank of India, for the first time in its history, has issued more than 20 issuer licenses. And that is very fascinating, because what is going to happen is that the payment instrument architecture, which has remained, more or less, it has remained unchanged for over 50 years, will now get disrupted thanks to the presence of Aadhaar, the India stack led by Aadhaar, NPCI, and the emergence of smartphones in our country. So clearly, whether it is delivery of really small value credit on your cell phone, where the underwriting is being done completely digitally, to payments where you will be able to, in almost real time, basis of where you are transacting, with whom you are transacting, your payment instruments will get dynamically configured with the right loyalty, with the right authentication method, with the right payment method, with the right credit, such that you get the best deal from that transaction right at that point. So this big picture which is emerging is what is keeping us awake and excited to participate in this.
Vijay, you know, in these kind of situations where non-linear change is happening, seminal change is happening, often what holds us back is our own beliefs. You know, we believe in myths that, are you aware of any such myth that you have discovered is turned out to be untrue? And can you point to a couple of others that you think will be demolished in the years to come?
Yeah, I think when we started Paytm and in this country, and I remember my board, in fact, had a very incredible people who said that, Vijay, you are doing biggest risk of your life to build a payment business in the country where people are so comfortable paying using cash that you shouldn't attempt it. And I believe that this is the biggest myth that Indians who are poor, who are not able to have financial inclusion, are interested in keeping the cash with themselves. In fact, Indians are the people whom, if we give the power of the smartphone in their hand and then the applications that can be on top of it, they can change every behavior that you expect them to do. We were totally shocked that in 15 months since start, when we started to the 15 month, we crossed 100 million users in this country. And 100 million users were doing more than half of, in fact, 100 million of Paytm users are doing half of the total transactions of every Visa, Master, Amex, Diner combined in the country. And that has been totally phenomenally surprising to us. And truth be told, that I'm totally not surprised. I believe that as Indians, we will build the next 500 million platform in this country, which will be the benchmark for the world to see. We will start from the payment, and we will go to the financial inclusion, wealth management, insurance, fund management, and everything out there. What happens here is that we sit in the metaphors of the Western models. We believe that because we are poor, we are not deserving the systems. What I believe is that India will build these systems in-house. And I think platforms like Aadhaar, platforms like ourselves, this is what our opportunity is. And today I'm so happy about it. As a startup India, we must remember, and I think Travis said it so very well, when the world sees a massive risk and you see no risk, I think Paytm is that call for us. It's absolutely no-brainer, nil risk product, and there is no doubt that it is going to win across. I have no bet on it.
So Kabir, you bring like our other two panelists who are yet to speak a very global perspective. Tell us, you know, there is India Stack. There is, of course, the latent need which is there. There are early successes that you see on the panel here. What is the role of policy in all of this? Share with us your thoughts on that.
You have to ask yourself why someone is in the fintech space. India is, in fact, one of the most exciting markets for financial services innovation. There are two reasons for it. One is the largest share of the world's unbanked is in India. Over 20% of the world's unbanked is in India. That's a huge, huge, huge opportunity. You know, not just for payment services, but all sorts of services. And the other thing is the India Stack. India Stack is not just technology, Aadhaar, APIs, you know, all these different layers. It's actually smart policy. It's policy that creates the infrastructure, creates the enabling environment so that you have mass flourishing. So people can all, large corporates as well as small startups, people with an idea can walk onto the scene, can approach this huge challenge of reaching so many people with financial services at a level playing field. And I think there is nothing like this. It is indeed absolutely true that no other country has these pieces of technology. It just simply doesn't exist. It's very patchy elsewhere, or it's owned by a few private companies. It's not a true public good that enables all of you to exercise your innovative energies to solve this financial inclusion challenge in this country.
So, you know, Kabir and Sanjay were there, you know, literally just over a month ago. Bill Gates specially came to Bangalore for a 3-hour learning session with iSpirit, where we told him about what is happening. And if you see what he's been saying in the last 1 month is that India shall be at the forefront in the world for financial inclusion. Now, I know, Carl, you've written a book on financial inclusion. Do you agree with Bill Gates?
Absolutely. So
Why?
today I can build innovations in financial systems in India better than the infrastructure that exists in the United States, and I'll tell you why. So in 2006, I started the first virtual currency company. Actually, Masa-san funded me PlaySpan that was eventually acquired by Visa. And nobody was willing to fund it because there was no infrastructure in the United States to create payment applications. What Sharad and his team here has built, what they're calling as the India Stack, is actually a great innovation playground, actually Travis's word, which is innovation playground, in unbundling the payment infrastructure. So what you have here in India that doesn't exist anywhere in the world now, and I've actually written it in my book, and you can read there. But essentially, you have unbundled the identity and authentication which the Aadhaar brings, and then you unbundle the credit and the debit rails so you can do transactions with anybody, anyone, just using existing banking protocols. And then you have the application layer that can actually use any one of these underlying layers. That does not exist today, even in the United States, in one of the most sophisticated financial systems market. So thanks to you guys. And then one final thing I'll mention is this, that in order to bring people out of poverty, what you really need is not to give them cash, but we have to give them financial tools. And the tools can come in the form of a digital trail. So if we can provide a digital trail to people in terms of data, we can actually bet on them, we can give them credit, and that's how we can bring 2.5 billion people out of poverty.
So Nitin, you know, TiE, Silicon Valley, my friends here, Kanwal Rekhi, Mannu, Venk Shukla, all of them have coined this beautiful analogy that there's an innovation bridge between Silicon Valley and India. Now, some of us believe Silicon Valley will do very well innovating for the first billion, India will innovate for the next 6 billion. Do you buy into that vision?
I actually believe that India is really poised to create an enormous number of jobs. They have to, as Abhinav Khan said, that we have got 10 million people coming into workforce every year, and over 10 years is 120 million people. On the other hand, we also have a lot of people living below the poverty line, and so we have to bring those people up into the inclusion level as well. So what are the kinds of things that India is doing? Well, clearly the reservation systems that India did start much earlier has done well for bringing people from poverty into the upper level of society. But look at the kinds of things that are going on, what we hear from Ola cabs, just to take a specific example. An Ola cab driver, on average, when I interviewed 4 of them in Mumbai, they make about 60,000 rupees a month, net profit. The driver makes only 14,000 if you employ a driver there. So now they are having difficulty finding drivers. Now, if you couple that with the women are the key to really getting people out from lower level of the society and reducing poverty to the higher level. If there were training programs, and I believe Ola is already thinking about doing that, is to start women driver training. They really need the supply. They really need to get the people from the financial inclusions back in. It's an amazing opportunity. Same thing about many of the companies I've seen here.
So Vijay, there is a very crazy idea that is cooking. And I want you to sell this to the team. And just before we end, we're going to do a show of hands and see how many of them are willing to support this crazy idea. If lots of them are willing to support, then I'm sure some of the government sits, you know, we see ministers and senior officials here, maybe they'll buy into that idea and we can start implementing it from April. The crazy idea is that, look, we dematerialize stock certificates in 4 years. Do you think we can dematerialize cash in 4 years? Make your case.
And
Vijay.
I want to tell you, Sharad, this is an underestimation, because I think India's every success in any space, whether it was telephony, whether it is internet, whether it is television, whether it was anything, has always been wireless and the mobile driven. We will skip the plastic generation and jump to the mobile tokens faster than any country in the world, and because we will be that savvy on the smartphones, we will be able to deliver far more services. So our payment tokens won't be dumb like currency, they will be smart like smartphones are. And I can take a bet that they are outstandingly happening before 2020 happens in this country.
So how many of you want India to go cashless in 4 years? Raise your hand.
We go mobile, we go smartphone. Actually, that is what the bet is.
All right.
Smartphone is the magic drug for this country, and the capabilities of the mobile internet won't stop us there.
So I want to hear a loud cheer if you believe in this. Raising your hand is not enough. All right. So we, if Ravi and Deep permit us, do we have time for 1 or 2 questions? One question. And I saw that hand go up first. So go ahead. You were on the phone. Please shout out your question. You come up front if you can, we'll repeat your question.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I work in a B2B market.
No. He's asking the question. We have only one question that we can take. Please come up front quickly. We are very short on time. Yeah.
I'm Amit Agarwal, and I'm trying to go for a paperless customs clearing documentation. And for last 3 months, I'm trying to do the e-sign application into my product. Unfortunately, there are only two companies who are doing it, CDEC and eMudra. Do you want to increase the people who will be doing this for the industry? Because it's really difficult to get those two on board.
Okay, so eSign is a new product that was released last year, and the Department of IT has asked for more people to come in and sign up as service providers. I'm aware of at least 4 startups who are in this space who will be coming up very shortly, and we should have more competition which will help serve your needs.
Yeah, our goal is to make sure that we have a big ecosystem, lots of competition, so that you don't have this problem.
Sharad, can I request you to close?
Yeah, so with that, I think we are out of time. We were really rushed. We would have loved to spend more time on this. But thank you so much, all the panelists. I'm sorry we didn't have more time to spend on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharad. Thank you, everyone. There's a memento for all the panelists. Thank you for being here. And we have a very brief video, 60 seconds, as we change over for the next session.
We believe that the only way to predict the future is to create.
We use AI to know what a consumer will need next, to finding fraud from 1 million transactions, or even trade on its own on the stock market. And we've been able to deliver huge impact across international governments, banks, corporate.
It's a real pleasure to start up the next session. We have a very interesting talk with really a very distinguished person. I'm going to first introduce the moderator. If we can cut the music on the video, please. Our next session is the funding curve. It's a fireside chat, and we've got Mr. Srivatsan Rajan, or better known as Sri, who is the chairman, Bain & Company in India. He's also, before this, been an entrepreneur. He co-founded Tavant. Welcome, Sri. And Sri has the pleasure of speaking with and interviewing Mr. Nikesh Arora. Nikesh is president and CEO of SoftBank, and besides that, probably one of the best speakers I've heard. Welcome, Nikesh.
Great. Thank you very much. I know this is a session that a lot of people have been looking forward to. I'm not going to spend any time introducing Nikesh. He's a man who helped build Google into one of the most valuable companies in the world, and also helped convert that noun into a verb. If you want to know more about him, I would suggest that you Google him. As all of you are aware, a couple of years ago, Nikesh made the move to SoftBank, and since then has brought a more focused approach to investing in India. And I'm going to talk to him about his perspectives on investing and the learnings for entrepreneurs across his career. And we're not just going to talk about investing, but also talk a little bit about lessons that he's learned over the course of his last 20, 25 years. So the first question I have for Nikesh is that you've had a pretty broad canvas, both at Google and at SoftBank, in terms of the operations that you've run around the world. As you've looked at the potential in countries, why India and why now? What's your perspective in terms of why is this now becoming, or has become, such an attractive market where people like SoftBank and others are flocking to this country?
Sri, before I answer that question, I'm going to use up a quick 15 seconds of the 15, 20 minutes we're allotted. I want to applaud Mr. Amitabh Kant for setting up, I think, what is one of the best startup events in the world. Please. As has been said by previous people on stage, no other country would you get the secretaries of various ministries up on stage answering questions from entrepreneurs. I've never seen it done before, so I give him a lot of credit for doing that. So with that, I think that's also part of the reason, which tells you why India now. About 18 months ago, when I joined Mr. Song, who's here, we were both talking about where should we be looking at with the huge sort of uptick in smartphones in India. And we sat there and said, with Masa's experience in China, we sat there and said, what is the next large market around the world? And even Travis mentioned the three bays, Bangalore and Beijing and San Francisco. I think we thought this was the right time to focus on India. And India was sitting at the beginning of what could be a huge potential uptick in the next 10 or 15 years. And I think we've been very fortunate and lucky to be able to find 6 or 7 amazing entrepreneurs in India to support and work with.
Great. The second question is really, as you look at the arc of your career, people assume that everything has always been positive. That you had a great career at Google, and before that, at T-Mobile, and now at SoftBank. But one has to assume that there have been times in your career where you faced difficult situations. Masa talked about that this morning, when he talked about the value of SoftBank declining by 99%. But what about your learnings? What are the difficult times that you've gone through and learnings from that?
I think, Sri, one of the most important things we all do as human beings is romanticize the past.
Yes.
You want to forget about it, you romanticize and say, wow, that was an amazing time.
Yeah.
I have no memory of anything that bad that ever happened.
Yeah.
That's the only way you move forward. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
But in terms of lessons, I think a lot of the lessons that you learn in a startup, you also learn in any large company or any company that has gone from being a startup to an established large company. I think some of the lessons are very similar. People with passion survive, people with passion do well, people with passion create great things. I think companies that aspire to do something big, something like changing the world with greater ambitions, actually do better than people who look around for funding or money, etc. So I think a lot of the lessons you learn in large companies are very similar to lessons you learn in entrepreneurship.
Great. One of the things, people have talked about this during the day, which is that there's a tendency on the part of startups, especially in India, to sometimes get a little defocused, look for opportunities beyond what they've intended to start up the company with. In your mind, how do you make sure that your portfolio companies, how do you make sure that they're focused on the intent that you've invested in them with?
I think there's a lot of conversation during the entire day which talks about startup, which talks about funding, which talks about teams, which talks about how do you get money. And I think the most important part that everybody in this room should aspire to is what am I creating for the end user, the end consumer of my service? How am I changing their life? How am I making it better? Right? Because if you find something, if you solve the problem, if you find the big problem and you solve it, and actually you and I as consumers love that product, then nothing else matters. And as somebody said earlier, if you are doing really well, if you're solving a lot of people's problems, you'll have no trouble finding the money. People will find you and give you the money. The moment you start getting focused on how do I find money, how do I get funding, how do I do something to build a great business, that's when you start to get defocused. You really focus on solving the customer's problem. And I think the message which I have given to our companies or anyone who's willing to listen is find the problem for the consumer. Find an amazing way to solve it and have them turn around and say, wow, that was great. I really want to do that again.
The next question, Nikesh, is there's a lot of demand, I'm assuming, on your time, that a lot of people want to talk to you. I was witnessing earlier today, people wanting to shake your hand, people wanting your business card, people just wanting to talk to you. How do you, in terms of tips for entrepreneurs, how do you make sure that your time management is effective? What do you do to make sure that the way you spend your time is actually the most effective way you do it?
I think that's a fascinating question, Sri. I think everybody in this room is trying to change the world, trying to create something amazing in their notion of building a startup. Sometimes people forget, even I'm trying to get something done, right? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to find a few amazing companies every year so we can support them, we can help them become great businesses. So unfortunately, the most ruthless way for us, me and people like yourselves or people in similar businesses, we all have to focus on what we're trying to achieve. And what we're trying to achieve is find some amazing entrepreneurs who are changing the world. So we have to become very, very quick at being able to assess whether this is something which is the right idea, the right market size, as Masa said earlier, is this a person with the sparkling eyes? And do they have the ability to take this idea and execute? So unfortunately, I wish I had more time to share with people who wanted some more time. But we try and be as ruthless with our time as you are, I guess, in your life. Sure.
Tell us a little bit about, an idea whose time you think hasn't yet come, but might be a big opportunity over the course of the next couple of years, few years. What do you think? It might be something in India, it might be something that the world hasn't seen yet, but what do you think is an idea like that?
Well, I've tried to give that answer to that question before, but the problem is the moment I start answering the question, I'll be mobbed by 50
Business
people
plans,
who will
yes.
tell me that they've solved the problem.
Yes.
But I will still take the risk and tell you. I think two of the areas which I've been personally very interested in, which I haven't seen a scale solution yet, is one, it's very close to my heart, is the notion of education. Education is a topic where we all send our kids to school. We all go through the same 12 years of education. We all get taught the same thing at the same pace at the same time. Now with the technology that we have, with the smartphones, with the personalization, with things like streaming videos and stuff, I think there is a possibility for us to reshape the way education is conducted. There's no reason why I must take 12 years to learn something, and so must the entire population of the world. There's no reason why everybody has to learn the same thing from age 18 to 22, and you have to graduate college in those 4 years. So I think there's a huge amount of technology that can be applied to education, but that is something that really requires partnership with the government, which makes things a little harder. And most people, I think somebody heard earlier, somebody asked a question, how do I start getting involved with the government and making something work with them? And somebody quipped it next to me, the best way to build a business is not to get involved with them, right? So that's the challenge.
So there's a lot of anticipation in terms of the policy package for startups that's expected to be announced later on today. The obvious question for you is, what would you want to see in that package that would excite you?
I actually believe we've already achieved some degree of success.
Okay.
And the reason I believe that is that the moment the country starts focusing on making life easier for startup founders and companies, you've already started the process. The fact that the Honorable Prime Minister is going to come speak about startups puts the focus entirely on all the people in this room, because whatever's going to happen is going to be good. The fact that you can get people sitting up on stage and answering questions for entrepreneurs means the movement has started. And I don't think there's going to be one fell swoop day when everything is going to be solved and we go off on our merry ways and say, great, startups are going to be very successful. I think the fact that we have taken this problem head on as a country, the fact that there are people in the audience who are from various parts of government, various parts of the startup ecosystem, and we are all united in trying to help make life a lot easier for startups, because we believe that is going to be the way we're also going to solve a lot of problems, whether it's problems of employment, the problems of innovation, the problems of infrastructure. I think that's a great start. I think this journey is going to take a lot of time. It could take us 10 to 15 years. So I think we've already won the first sort of battle, and hopefully anything that the Honorable Prime Minister can announce is only going to take us forward in that journey towards getting a better environment for startups.
Great. Deep, I had a question. Do we have time for questions from the audience?
We both are speaking very fast, that's what I think. Yes.
We're all speaking both very fast. Okay, so probably a few questions. I'm going to direct the mics to people. The one request that I had, same rules as before, which is don't make a pitch. I know that Nikesh has a lot of money to invest, but this is not the time that he's evaluating business plans. So please make sure that...
We're always evaluating business
plans. Okay, but not here, not here. But make sure your question is such that the answer is helpful to most of the people in the room, not just to you. So I see Arvind over there in the corner. Can you just... 1 second, Arvind over there. The person who has the mic.
Yeah. Straight question to Nikesh. Why are you investing in a big way in solar energy in India?
I think it has to do with both the inspiration that Masa had when he decided to focus on clean forms of energy in Japan. And I think by extension, when we started looking at India, we thought India has a huge opportunity in the fact that it has the opportunity to leapfrog the existing not clean ways of creating energy. In addition to that, India is a country which is blessed with a lot of sunlight, a lot of solar. So I think that, and with the tremendous amounts of sort of reshaping of the entire energy sector in India, we felt it would be a good time to invest. Of course, the government has done a great job in creating the right auctions, and not particularly great for us people who are bidding in the auctions, but you know, we're gonna have to deal with it.
Okay, the gentleman in white.
The first thing I want to hear from him is that he doesn't want our money. He's perfectly happy, or she's perfectly happy, because they have found a great sustainable long-term business model, and they're actually working on it, and they found a set of happy customers, and they believe that now it's just a simple matter of scaling that problem. I love an entrepreneur who I have to go convince, please take my money, I can help you, as opposed to an entrepreneur trying to convince me that I should give them my money.
Make sure you get a mic. Or just shout the question out, it's okay. The question was just for the audience, are you planning to invest in artificial intelligence? No, I know. No, I'm not answering the question. Don't worry. I know who the question is directed to.
As Mr. Sohn said earlier in the day, that he's very sure that in 30 years the computing power is going to go up by 1 million times, communication power is going to go up by 1 million times, and when that happens and things start talking to each other, obviously we're going to have things smarter than us human beings. So we are interested in artificial intelligence. The question is, how do you invest in it?
Okay, the very back over there. On the top, yep. On the services side.
So I get a sense that actually in India it's the reverse. There's a lot of funding in the services side, not enough funding in deep technology, and not enough funding on the product side. I don't know if that was your question, but we are beginning to see the signs of some companies which are actually trying to do deep research and try and create products for the Indian market as well as the global market. And I think the Indian startup ecosystem is still early, it's still nascent, so all of us have the responsibility of collectively handling it with care. Valuations have run up very quickly, as we know, in 2015. I'm sure 2016 we're going to see some mishaps, and 2016 is going to be the year of execution. So I'm hoping that we can ride the wave going forward, and hopefully the success of startups, the comfort in people working on startups is going to allow people to take more risk and actually create more and more product-based startups.
So Nikesh, I have one question for you before I take it back to the audience. You've talked about the fact that there's a little bit of frothiness in the market in India, especially in terms of valuation. Is your belief that once this frothiness goes away through whatever correction mechanism or whatever it is, that there will still be an appetite for entrepreneurship in the country?
Well,
we've seen it today.
Yeah, so I'm not sure I would classify that as frothiness. Okay. I think because of the fact that the risk profile of the world was low, money was easy to access, people have been willing to give money much quicker to startups and much quicker to new ideas. I think in the last 2 weeks we've seen that a higher degree of risk has come into the market, so there's a little bit more trepidation, a little more caution. I think all that does is it makes it harder to raise money if you don't have a good idea. So all that will happen is that great companies will continue to get funded, not so great companies will get weeded out sooner. But I think I expect that we will continue to see funding happening in the market for great ideas.
And therefore the current wave of entrepreneurship will continue as well.
I hope so.
Okay. Deep, I'm going to keep going till you stop
Yes,
me.
sir.
One more question. That person over there,
Yeah,
hi Nikesh, my name is Pushkal. This question is not really about funding, but since you already know that entrepreneurs, the biggest asset that we have is time. And I just wanted to know your thoughts on how we should decide that it's time to pull the plug, except that, we might go broke, that's another case. But your advice on pulling the plug on this company.
I think if you lost faith in your idea, if you believe that the idea that you had is not going to work, and you have to go back and reinvent yourself and reinvent the idea, it's time to give up. But I don't think you should give up in any other circumstance.
All right, thanks.
Sir, one last question around deep discount models, on which Ola, Flipkart, Snapdeals, in which some of, yes sir, here.
Okay, over there. Got it.
So my question is around the huge funding that is being done in Flipkart, Olas, and several other companies who are running huge, deep discount models. I want to understand when they will start making actual profits and how long you will continue to fund them. I really don't see them making profits. Amazon working for last 20 years, they are running on very, very thin margins. Would there be a bloodbath at some point in time in future?
Travis, what do you think? You also want the answer to that question? All right, Travis also wants an answer to that question. Look, I think 2015 was a year we saw tremendous amounts of funding go into a lot of companies. But also what it did was it created a bit of a shakeout in various sectors in the market. The e-commerce sector has gone from 500 plus companies down to probably 10. The ride-hailing business has gone down to perhaps 2 companies. So now 2016, you've got to sit back and say, are these deep discounting models required to continue, or is it time for the people in this business to start differentiating and start trying to compete on the quality of experience and service to the end consumer, and let the consumer decide who they want to make the leader, as opposed to keep trying to buy the attention of the consumer. So our message to all of our companies is, please focus on execution, please focus on creating a great customer experience, and let the customer decide. In many of these sectors, I think there is room for more than one player in the market, so hopefully our investee companies and other companies in the same sector will listen to the advice.
And I think you've said this before, the DCF always wins.
In the end, you've got to make money.
You've got to make money.
Thank you, Rajan.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikesh Arora. Thank you, Mr. Rajan, for a lovely session. So that last question is very apropos, because the next session that we have is Show Me the Money, how do we capitalize on entrepreneurship? But before I call up our eminent panelists, I'd like to request one last time that anybody who's seated in these aisles, this is a security requirement, needs to go back to that blue border that you see back there. They're not going to let anybody be seated in these aisles. They have to be clear for an emergency. So could you please clear all of the aisles? This is absolutely necessary. Anybody seated, madam, from here onwards, you'll have to go back. I'm sorry. Up to the blue wall back there. Everybody on the left too, please. You have to make your way back up to the top. It will delay us because this is the final session before the Honorable Prime Minister arrives. Yeah, there is space in the back, so you would have to make your way to the back. I'm sorry, I'm going to wait. Can I have everybody who's seated in the aisle on my left here, please, we request you to go back to the blue wall in the back. Gentlemen,
stairs in the balcony.
You are seated here, please. Yes, you can take the stairs up, you can sit on the balcony. Everybody has to get up. May I request Mr. Sridhar Prasad, partner at KPMG, to join us. Mr. BJ Arun, CEO of July Systems. BJ. Ritesh Agarwal. Oyo. Ritesh, how are you? Welcome. Ms. Radhika Agarwal of ShopClues. Radhika. Mr. Naveen Tiwari, CEO, co-founder of InMobi. Mr. Sachin Bansal, co-founder and CEO of Flipkart. And finally, I have the honor of inviting on stage, as our moderator for this session, Ms. Sri Jayant Sinha, Minister of Finance, or State for Finance.
Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here and to see the energy and excitement in the room. And I'm also very honored to have such an eminent panel with a wonderful set of entrepreneurs and founders who need absolutely no introduction. And I think we got a great segue into this session from the previous session when Nikesh was asked about how to balance investment, scaling up of businesses, and actually making sure that the businesses that are being created by all of you are going to be real businesses in the long run. And so what we want to do in this panel is really to explore this set of issues. Since time is limited and the Honorable Prime Minister will be joining us shortly, what I thought might be most interesting is to actually sharpen this discussion on three very key issues. And I'm speaking from someone who was himself a venture capitalist and helped fund companies like Quikr, Treehouse, D-Lite, and Daily Hunt. So I've seen these situations, I've seen these issues in real life, and to have such an eminent panel discussing these issues with us, I think is a real treat for us this evening. So the three questions I thought I would pose to all of them, and we'll do a go around. I'll pose the question and then they can each give a 1 or 2 minute answer, and then we can go on to the next question. And we'll start from my left and go on to my right. So the first question I'd like to ask them is, how do you balance the funding side of the business? And of course, some of them have raised, $1 billion or more, with the actual scaling of the business itself. How does that work in terms of not getting distracted? So that's question number one. Question number two, and I think this is a question maybe all of you want to know about, is there a bubble right now as far as the Indian startup ecosystem is concerned? Is there a bubble? And then number three, the question I'd like to ask all of them, and this is something that in my role today I'm keenly interested in, is are you going to list in India or not? So are you going to list in India or not? I really want to know the answer to that question. So let me start with the first question, which is how do you balance the tension between raising capital and actually building a great business? And I'd like to start on my left-hand side, please.
Thank you, Jayant. I'm BJ Arun. I'm CEO of July Systems, which is headquartered in the San Francisco Bay Area, but we have a team in Bangalore as well. So to your question about balancing between how much money you raise and spend versus how much it really is, I think the entrepreneur needs to determine whether the amount of money they're raising is sufficient for them to scale the business or not. In the Silicon Valley, we have seen time and again that when people get funded with too much money, it's actually a recipe for disaster. You lose the fiscal discipline, and people just, we've seen that in the whole dot-com boom. And you kind of alluded to whether are we in a bubble again. Those of us who've been around for long enough, 1999-2000, we pretty much saw the exact same scenario happen in the Silicon Valley, and we're seeing the same thing play out in India again today. So I actually would, at this risk of sounding like a wet blanket, like to caution my fellow entrepreneurs that not everybody needs to necessarily become a unicorn. It is okay to be an entrepreneur, to have a startup, to have 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 5 crore business, and that's perfectly fine as long as you're making money at the end of it. So you don't have to be worth $20 billion. You don't necessarily have to list your company. You just have to make a profit running a business.
Thanks, Arun. Very, very interesting question, Jan. Thank you. I'm Radhika Agarwal. I'm the co-founder of ShopClues.com. We are, I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but India's latest unicorn. But most important over there, I think for us to remember is the appetite of a horse is very different from the appetite of an elephant. What are you truly building? For us, we believe that we've been a lean, mean machine pretty much from day one. Travis showed a beautiful video of these women running the 600-meter race, and she falls down and she keeps running after that. And I feel at ShopClues, that's what we've done. We've had a couple of falls, we've had a couple of drop-offs, but our focus on being on frugality, on being very, very capital efficient has always worked well. And that's what we want to continue to do. Now, how much time do you really spend on the funding part of it? What is the valuation part of it? Again, back to what Nikesh said, you're building a company that has to provide value to the consumers. If you're creating value, the valuation will follow. And I think that's been the mantra for us, and we hope to carry forward with that. Thanks.
Yeah, I think, thanks Jan for the question. I think I echo the sentiment of what Radhika shared.
So, Sachin, let me just sharpen that question a little bit, which is, I know that the mantra that everybody repeats, which is let's build a great business and the valuations will come. That's what everybody sort of repeats all the time. But there are competitive effects in the sense that if your competitor is raising a lot of money, do you feel a pressure that you also need to raise a lot of money? If Amazon comes in and says we're going to have a blank, check here for India, what does that mean for Flipkart? And then how do you then balance that out with actually building a business that's going to compete with Amazon?
No, I think it's important to acknowledge the basic fact that money follows great businesses. I mean, if you don't have great businesses, if you don't have a good set of metrics, if you don't have a healthy business, then money doesn't come to you. Unless you have dumb investors who don't understand the business at all, which happens once in a while, but it's unhealthy as well. We shouldn't. People shouldn't do that. I think at Flipkart we have always tried to find investors who understand the business, because if you try and go after money which doesn't understand the business models at all, you will end up in a situation where the fiscal discipline will not be there. Investors don't know what is happening, and you make a lot of mistakes. I think you need to avoid that, right? But I think to answer the specific question, you can't be. You have to, as competition heats up in the market, in any segment, any sector. Of course, the table stakes of what it takes to compete in that space goes up, and that is what we are seeing, for example, in the taxi space or the e-commerce space, where entry of large international players definitely has taken the stakes up, and there is a minimum set of funds that you will need to even have a meaningful play in that space. And that's true for a lot of things, right? Even in manufacturing. Now, if you want to compete with China on manufacturing, there is a minimum set of size of factories and size of end expertise that you need to be able to compete, and that requires funds. I think that's what is happening, and you need to keep that in mind.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Na. So I'll just contextualize.
You want to switch on your mic?
Hello.
It's on.
Yeah, I'll just contextualize. I'm the lucky guy in this audience, in this particular panel, because I have not put in any money. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I still get the high of working with an entrepreneur and with a fund. So I'm the consultant in this group. So I'll just contextualize from the way I'm putting this across. So where we see people balancing this particular challenge which is coming up is in having a clear answer to why do you need money. The topic says show me the money. That can be the same question which the investor also asks, right? So in the growth stage, I'm sure that the other panelists also would have seen the kind of funds they are marrying during the journey helps in a way bring in a kind of a balance for them, because the demands also change. I mean, we work with startups, we work with unicorns, we work with the investors as well. So where we see the balance slowly coming up is when they've got the right investor with the same mindset. I mean, Sachin mentioned about having an understanding of the business model, but the mindset to accelerate, if we are able to balance, that's when we have seen, whether it be a startup asking for a 10 crore funding or somebody raising billions, where we see a kind of a stability coming up in the system.
Terrific. Thank you. Naveen.
I think, to answer the first part of your question, I think it's absolutely very distracting to raise money. And there is no questions about it. And unfortunately, the only person who can go and raise money is the CEO or the founder. So therefore, prime time of your essentially goes into trying to raise money. Having said that, I think, I don't think there is necessarily a balance that people even apply, and they shouldn't. I think if you have more money, that's brilliant. And so you should raise more money if you can get more money. Because most of the time you won't get that much money if your business is not that good. So if you're getting it, you should use it. I think the caution I would put is people confuse a lot of money with success, and that you will win because you have a lot of money. I think this theory probably is being played out in India to say, can capital in effect be the only thing that can help companies win over a long period of time? I don't think in the West, at least, capital has allowed companies to win. It boils down to core product and technology and the team and the culture, etc., that allows for companies to win and build. I think that caution is the only one that I would put out to a lot of the entrepreneurs, not the caution of balance, and not the caution that whether you need to raise or not, you should raise as much as you get and as soon as you get.
Hi, I'm Ritesh. I can tell you pretty nervous and also very excited because it's the first time I'm with a minister who's also was a VC earlier. Guys, how many times do you see this across the world? A minister who was a venture capitalist earlier. This is, and asking questions where you almost feel like you're talking to a shareholder. This is exciting. So, Jen, for the questions, I think first Nikesh is an investor, and I look at him, look up to him, learning a lot of things. And one of the things that he mentioned was, if you're building a great company, capital will follow. So I think there's no way I can't, understand and believe in it. So continue building a business which we believe will revolutionize. How do we take any piece of land in the world, standardize it, and bring it online? So that's something that we deeply care about. The second thing, which is about bubble, I think while in the interim, a lot of us might think that, oh, this company is probably valued higher by 20 mil or 50 mil or one of those things. But I think in the long term, if India has 450 million travelers who get into railway trains, buses, truckers, and so on, and if we build India's largest brand of hotels, which will enable all of these places, people to find a place, there is absolute, the valuation that you're talking about is going to be nuts in comparison to what it is today. So I think while there'll be some fraud here and there, but if you're solving a real problem, none of this really matters.
So Ritesh, you clearly think that your valuation hasn't peaked yet, does it? I
Of
think
course not.
you might still be raising funds. But let's turn to the other question, which is, are we in a bubble? Are we in a bubble as far as the Indian startup ecosystem is concerned? And if we are in a bubble, how do you think it's going to end?
This is a very, very difficult question because when you're living through a bubble, everybody's on a high. Okay? And we were on a high in 1999, 2000 during the dot-com boom. All of us were worth gazillions of dollars, and we were loving it. And if somebody came and wanted to poop on the party, we would hate him. But unfortunately, we have seen this movie before. And I think we are in a bubble, and when the bubble bursts, it's not a pretty picture. And people are going to get hurt quite badly. And particularly, I worry that a country like India, it'll be harder to recover from the burst of a bubble than it was for the United States. So that's my personal opinion.
So Radhika, are you getting ready for the bubble bursting?
I have a completely different point of view here. Indian retail is about 683, 700 billion. Indian e-commerce is 10 billion, 12 billion, depending on who you talk to. That's less than 1.5%, 2% of penetration. There is, the Indian consumer is changing fundamentally. Consumption habits are changing fundamentally. And this is going to result in value. So value is being added right now. For people who are sitting on the board over here, maybe I'm an exception, we are a much younger company, but they've created industries that have completely disrupted the way traditional industries work. And there are people sitting out there who are creating disruptions for people sitting on this panel right now. So value is being added. Valuations are fine. I think there was a small era in there when people were looking more at, and part of it is, the media is to blame for that, right? You're all, the only time we made it over the fold of the first fold of a newspaper is when there was a false news about us raising a lot of money. What is the value that we are creating? Can we talk about that? And does that actually result in valuation? So I think we have a long way to go, and don't subscribe to the same thought as Arun does.
So Sachin, you are India's, I think, most highly valued startup. What do you think about this bubble idea?
I think we need to take a step back and look at the larger picture of India. I think and see where things are. All of internet companies of India put together, I think market cap wise will be less than $50 billion or so, and it's absolutely penetration as good as any other country. Will have internet almost free like air. Life will be disrupted or changed by technology in a big way, and artificial intelligence is going to, and as a in combination with mobile, is going to be a bigger disruptor, I think. And India has large problems which will be solved through technology. So if you look at the larger picture in the next 5 to 10 years, India's internet economy will be more than $500 billion or more. And that's absolutely going to happen. And I think, yes, their path to that will be shaky. There will be ups and downs. There will be mistakes. Sometimes there will be more money available. Sometimes the money will be, the supply-demand equation of funds and startups will be different at different points of times. And but I think the larger picture is that India is going to go through a lot of technology transformation. And India and powered by mobile, and this is going to be a large space. So I think yes, but I think a larger. If you look at that picture, I would say this is not. We're still very early, and this is and the future of some companies may be here and there, but future of internet as a whole, of course, is going to be very, very bright.
Jen, thanks. So I have a slightly different take. See, when I observe this as an independent party, what we are seeing today is a crazy convergence of sectors, right? Financial services, telecom, technology, e-commerce, converging because the end customer remains the same. So when an investor is looking at it, I mean, I actually did a diligence on somebody where the investor asked me, how amoebic is the business model? We are not used to this phrase before. When the dot-com bust happened, it was largely single-dimensional. Everybody wanted to go online and sell. But today, if you ask me, I mean, Sachin next to me, I mean, he and the others have just created an ecosystem. I don't think these guys are just retailers, right? In Bangalore, if you see people just delivering stuff, removing the t-shirt, wearing another t-shirt, going and delivering something else. So today, I think the valuation is also linked to this amoebic nature of the business. That's my personal view, because is it straight? It is not, because it's end of the day, what all can I serve the customer? Because the customer remains the same, whether you are a financial services company or a telecom company or an e-com company. So that's why the word bubble is a little convoluted, because it's not single dimensional to have it called a bubble. Because there are multiple revenues.
Sridhar, you're giving an answer like a consultant, which is, it depends.
It depends.
We want to know whether it's a yes or a no. We are investors.
So let me conclude. So I don't think it's a bubble at all, because the kind of investments which are coming and the kind of stability these guys have brought in the system can't break.
All right. So you're going to be investing your next bonus into startups?
Not in Flipkart, but some of the smaller ones.
So I have a slightly different take. I think it's outstanding that India is in a bubble. I think it's great because, countries don't get into bubble unless until there is massive, positive momentum around the country. And what happens is the exuberance might go up a little bit, even if needed to. But the fact is, if the bubble didn't happen, and by the way, I might even disagree with the fact that there is bubble, but I hope there is a bubble. And I hope that the bubble becomes even bigger, because there will be some casualty, but that's okay. Because the positive momentum of the bubble will basically create massive companies, a lot more money will come in, a lot more innovation will happen, a lot more disruption will happen. By the way, I know everyone you talk to in the world will always compare the bubble that India might be in to the 1999-2000 bubble of the US. But look at the fundamentals, they're completely different. Consumers are starting to pay online. Paytm is here and they can vouch for that. Flipkart's here, they can tell you that people are buying online. There are more and more phones being sold every day, day in and day out. I don't know what the latest number is, but somebody told me that we are close to 150, 160 million smartphones with close to 1 billion phones. Those number of smartphones are going to go up. People are going to get to connectivity. Probably about 500 million is what Sachin you said. 500 million more people will come online. All of these things are reality. And if that reality is there, then let it be bubble, because hopefully they will create 25 more big companies. 3 of them might go away, but that's net positive for the country.
This is amazing, Naveen. This is so similar to my views about the same. I know I was called here to talk about hotels and startups, and it's not my forte to talk about countries, but I'll draw a very interesting similarity. If you see countries across the world, the most successful countries are the ones that have gone through a major casualty. US went through the civil war, after which it recovered and built a brilliant country around it, Japan, and multiple other situations. I think for me personally, if India is in a bubble, and I hope it is in a bubble like Naveen says, and it goes through casualty, that will be the real trust, real check of character and guts in we entrepreneurs who are building companies in here. And if we can survive and build amazing companies, India will possibly become equal or more successful than all of these countries that went through casualties. So I think that's my personal belief.
Whether we are in a bubble or not, of course, the future will tell us. But I think all of us who've gone through many different cycles over the years, we recognize that that's the takeaway, that everybody has around these funding cycles. And so one day, the kind of funding that we are getting right now is certainly going to diminish. And at that point, if you don't have the cash to be able to get through to the point where you're cash positive, that's going to make things very, very difficult for you. So that is a lesson that I think all of us who've survived multiple of these funding cycles have learned. So that's the word of caution that I would have. But Naveen, please add.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think if people confuse the bubble with saying we will spend a lot more money to build the same kind of a business, that's stupidity. Like, there's no other word for that. And I think if that starts to happen, and that may happen because of the bubble, that is effectively what causes the bubble. It's not if people remain to the fundamentals of the business, you'll actually build amazingly big businesses because there is a bubble.
Excellent. Now let's turn to the third question, which is, would you list your business in India? That is, when you go for an IPO, when you go out and get a public listing, would you be willing to list in India, or would you be looking in New York or Singapore or some other market?
Jayant, that would all depend on what we hear at 6 o'clock, whether we'd be able to repatriate those funds to our... But jokes apart, of course, I mean, we are proud people of Indian origin, and if we had a chance, we of course would list our companies in India as well.
Thank you.
Totally agree with Arun. If the policies are right, India is the place for us. Our business is completely centered around India, and it would make no sense for us to go out of the country.
Yeah, I think right now, as we stand, I think India's markets need to be upgraded quite a bit to be able to attract, to be able to raise large amounts of funds. I think apart from that, absolutely, I think we would love to raise funds in India from the public market. Reason being that we are in India, and the retail investors or the investors here will understand our business much more than anybody else, and will understand the value of our business in the local context much more than anybody else. I think absolutely India is definitely our top choice.
Well, thank you for that. But Sachin, one of the factors that you will certainly be thinking about, and I think we will be thinking about from a market regulator and policymakers perspective, is if indeed you list at, let's say, $20 or $25 billion market capitalization. You have to remember that the largest listed Indian internet company today, Naveen, you probably know, is InfoEdge, I presume.
Yeah.
And InfoEdge is a market cap of about $2 or $3 billion.
Yeah.
So right now, for our markets to absorb a $20-25 billion market cap internet company is a real question.
Yeah.
As well.
No, I think that's a real question, and it will require policy. It will require.
I'm not sure that it would require policy as much as investors on the other side.
No, I think another aspect I think I would like to point out is that it may not be actually bad thing if a lot of foreign money comes because of companies like Flipkart or others actually listing outside of India as well. I think somebody once told me that we are not going to get rich if we keep trading among ourselves. We need to be able to attract foreign capital as well.
So maybe the answer to our current account issues might very well be a listing of Flipkart and have them attract $5 or $10 billion worth of foreign capital.
Absolutely.
Sure, I have a short point. You took my point away, both consultants sitting next to each other. So I think the problem here could be that the kind of growth they have and the kind of valuations they have, and that kind of money come in only from India? can the local market absorb that requirement? But having said that, the positive is that these are the people who use these services. I mean, we all would have put money into companies where we have not used services. But the benefit of this overall entrepreneurship ecosystem is that the people who are going to buy their stock know these companies as their service providers. So that could be another angle why they could consider listing here. But the challenge is what you said very, very aptly is a big challenge, which I personally feel.
Jen, this is the one where there is a huge dichotomy. The way things stand currently, there is I think it's close to impossible to list in India. But the dichotomy is because of the fact that you belong to India and that you built a company in India or from India. That creates a huge emotional component to trying to list in India. The point around whether the markets are ready in India or not is clearly a valid point, and I don't think it's ready right now. I don't think it'll be able to absorb a number of internet companies that might go public in India, over the next 5 years or so. And therefore, foreign money coming into India may not be such a bad option.
No, I think you're right, Naveen. I think if indeed some of our landmark signature unicorns, for instance, were to consider listing in India, and of course we'd be prepared and willing to work with you all to find out what the issues and challenges are and try and overcome them. As you know, SEBI recently did quite a bit to streamline and simplify the listing norms for startups. But if there's more to be done, of course we do that. But at the same time, having companies like yours and Sachin's list would also be a real booster shot for our equity markets as well. So while I was being half facetious about the current account deficit and attracting foreign capital, it's almost as important for us to attract more domestic capital in the equity markets as well. And the kind of excitement and energy that will come into our markets when companies like the ones that are on this dais talk about a listing in India would, I think, really be very, very positive for our country. So आपने कहा कि आप देशभक्त हैं, तो मैं उस देशभक्ति का थोड़ा फायदा भी उठाना चाहता हूँ. देश के लिए भी आप लोग कुछ करिएगा तो बहुत हम लोगों के लिए लाभदायक होगा. Ritesh.
Great points, Jayant. I think I have two views there. One view is, like Sonsan said earlier, that there's no hurry. We still have a long way to go. Our country is going to see significant growth in the infrastructure that needs to be created in hospitality. So I think still a long way to go for that. But for me, I would personally love to list in India. Of course, there are questions of policy, equity markets, FIIs, all sorts of things which I think I don't understand a lot about. But I think in general, the only reason why I will feel very excited about it is because the consumers who have fallen in love with our brand, the hotel owners who are making a lot of money with us, I would like them to own shares of OYO. And for them to subscribe to the shares, it's the easiest if it's listed in India. So I think I would personally want that and would love to work at relevant point of time with the relevant authorities to figure out how to do it.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We, I believe, still have another 5 minutes. So why don't I do another last round of questions, if that's all right with the panelists. So, the final question I'd like to ask all of you, which is that by and large you have been funded primarily by foreign venture capitalists. In your case, Arun, it may be a little different since you might have been funded in the Valley. But one of the things that we are trying to address from a policy making perspective is to strengthen our domestic venture capital industry and have a deeper pool of domestic limited partners as well. Today, 90% of the funding that's coming in for startups in India is foreign venture capital. Do you think that building a domestic venture capital industry, domestic high net worth individuals, angels, is that going to change the nature of innovation? As you change the nature of financing, do you think that's going to change the nature of innovation as well in India? Will we work more on Indian problems and perhaps not so much on global or problems that are well known around the world? What would be your view on that?
Yeah, I think it's not only going to change, but it's essential that it change, and for a couple of reasons. One is, as I pointed out earlier, I don't think every entrepreneur, every startup, or every young man or woman in this audience who's going to start a company will be able to go and raise venture capital from institutional investors. And in the Silicon Valley, when we have to go start our companies, we go to our friends, we go to our neighbors, we go to our colleagues, we go to anybody who could actually put some money in us. And so it really is, and that money has to come from our local investors. We cannot, go and look for angels in other countries. So we definitely need to start from the angel network and then work our way up. But the money has to come from, local people.
So let's try and do this quickly because I know we'll run out of time.
So very quickly, when we go out and pitch to investors in Hong Kong, Singapore, US, one of the examples we give is like in China, that way in India. But the fact is that the Indian consumer and a lot of things about the Indian industry are different that Indian investors are more likely to understand. So yes, definitely getting an Indian domestic high net worth individuals or an angel network or even a VC network going, very, very beneficial. New ideas will definitely come up.
I think it's already happening to a certain extent. I think, for example, I have started investing in startups almost on a regular basis. I meet companies. I think a lot of people have gotten interested. It's about understanding. There are enough number of people now in the market who have the funds as well as the understanding of the internet space to be able to do angel investing. Yes, I think it's not gone to a level where Indian companies can raise $50 million, $100 million or so from Indians yet. I hope, I don't know what needs to be done for that, but I'm hoping that over time it will get solved on its own.
Quickly, commendable, Jayant. I think you're seeing a kind of an infectious culture of risk-taking in investments, because you see corporates now carving out funds for incubating startups which are adjacent to their business. So like that far faster is what I believe.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
I don't think there is any other way to solve for all the very deep-rooted problems of the country unless until the money is coming from the local LPs. A lot of the problems and investments that have happened in companies that have a very broad-based business models, which are globally acceptable business models. So whether it's advertising, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's payments, they are very globally accepted business models. I think there is a huge wave of investments that needs to happen if somebody were to solve for problems, let's say, very, very deep-rooted on let's say, on education, on healthcare or security. And those solutions are not solutions that have existed elsewhere. So if the investors are not local, they will not be able to appreciate what the solution is going to look like. Today, if you look at a lot of the companies that have been invested, the business models are compared between here, China, and the US. Tomorrow, those business models will not have that comparison. And the only reason those business models will get invested and funded if there are local investors investing, local money getting invested in those. Personally, for example, just like Sachin, I would have done like 25 investments. Half of them may not be the models which are generalized across the globe. They are very, very localized to India, and because one can appreciate what that business model would look like, and therefore one would essentially do it. And my favorite one, which I recently did, was somebody essentially said, how do you get, somebody is basically doing a business and saying, how do you get local mithai, which are famous in different parts of the country, and how do I get them distributed all over the country? So that if I'm living in Bangalore and I loved the Taggu ka laddu, where I'm from Kanpur, then how do I get Taggu ka laddu while I'm living in Bangalore? And those are business models which I don't think are necessarily possible unless and until you are a local investor.
Terrific.
I think I have a view where I think there's a little bit of a problem in terms of the risk-taking appetite around. And I'll give you an interesting example. It was on our table itself when Sridhar said that he's going to invest in a smaller company, but not on Flipkart and a 15 bill or 20 bill value. I think if China's largest e-commerce company can be 200 bill plus, there is absolutely no reason why India's leader in e-commerce, or whoever is the leader in the future term, is not $50 or $100 billion in value, and 3x or 4x return is massive, right? So I think someone like Sridhar, who would have a wealth manager, should effectively be putting money in Flipkart himself, instead of saying that I should be putting small money in terms of that perspective. So I think it's important to make really, really big risks, because India's largest, if you were to think about it, of course, internet okay. I think there's a lot of aspiration there.
Well, thank you, all of you. And of course, we have to end the panel now because the Honorable Prime Minister is awaited shortly. We've had a very, very interesting discussion. I'm very glad that you have,
Thank you. Thank you, Sri Jaintsna. Thank you very much. We have a small token of our appreciation. So we'd like to request everybody to remain seated. You cannot leave the hall at this point because you won't be able to come back in. We have one request. If those of you who would need a Hindi to English translator headset, please raise your hand. There are a few hundred of them here, and we can get them out to you. Can we have the translator headsets put out, please? They'll come around. Just give us a second. Can we have the startup videos while we're doing, so a couple of them?